Yeah, thanks, Essa, and thanks for having me back. No pressure with that introduction, huh? Thank you. Yeah. Hi everyone. Good morning. Thanks for those of you taking the trip from Copenhagen to Malmö this morning, or for those of you who are already here, shorter trip, but still warm welcome. Yes, I'm Simon. I am the customer journey lead in Nordea, working with business banking area across the Nordics. I have, almost more than a decade of working with customer journeys and journey management in the financial sector. Previously in Danske Bank, largest bank in Denmark. Now in Nordea, the largest Nordic bank. So have a lot of experience with large organizations and the complexity that they drive. I think most of you know Nordea. If some of you don't, we are the largest Nordic bank with our main markets in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We have quite a diverse customer portfolio, so that means we design solutions for basically everyone. It's kids, it's young people, it's your everyday families, it's the elderly, it's the large companies just starting out their journey, the scale-ups, the large corporates. We basically span quite a lot and have a lot of especially digital solutions with, 5.2 million daily active users. I think that's pretty impressive across. I know startups that would kill for those numbers, right? So what this also brings is we try to be something for everyone, and that brings complexity. And that was part of what I talked about last year. So for those of you who were there, you know the story. But basically, I talked a lot about metro maps. That was kind of weird, right? Mainly it was trying to this analogy to explain why does complexity grow in large organizations. And I think the conclusion was largely the sinner is great ideas. Everyone has great ideas around in the organization, and they're fighting to get their idea implemented, to get their idea to sort of be the one that we spend time and effort and money on, right? And that's tough, because then we, as customer journey management people, have to fight. We have to fight all those great ideas, because we also have great ideas, and we think we have the best ideas, right? Because we know what the customers are going through. I was also so bold that I gave you a checklist of things to do when you were implementing customer journey management based on the work I'd done previously. I told you needed to start small, find a problem that's worth solving. Get your hands dirty. Then you need to actually anchor it into the organization, and then you, in the end, have to integrate it. Problem is, I also told you I was going to do these things, right? I had just started in Nordea, so a lot of it was based on past experience from where I'd previously worked. And I sort of gave myself this checklist of going out and doing it. So did I actually do all of those things I recommended you guys to do? I actually based my presentation on that. So let's go through it and look at the presentation. I think there's something wrong with the animations here, Essa. It seems. Is it the PDF or the PowerPoint? It should be the PowerPoint. Otherwise, it's gonna be a little a little rushed, I think. No worries, but I can start from here basically. So what happened was after this, I want to say almost after the presentation last year, we went to top management in the business banking area and told them we think it would be a good idea to start working with journey management. And top management looked at us and said, we don't know what that means. So first job was sort of to say we need some kind of buy-in on what it is that we're going to work with and how this can help the business. And what we did to help them out was basically say, we've identified 5 key journey areas that we think you should work with. Here they are. It's these 5. We would probably recommend starting over here because that's the area that's most mature. We can probably see some quick wins. They said no. We have a big problem in our onboarding area, and basically what they told us is we're hearing from the customer that it takes too long to be a customer and to become a business customer in Nordea. Please help us solve this. And we looked at it and said, yeah, we can see that. This is the area that's the least mature. No one's working on it. There was someone a couple of years ago that tried to work on this. It was a large project that sort of got parked because it was just, it was too extensive. So we said, okay, we're up for the challenge. If we want to prove that this actually worked, let's then take on the biggest challenge that we have in the organization currently. So that's what we did. We basically said, okay, let's go. And then set out on the project here to basically show that customer journey management worked by introducing it for the first time in this business area. We have our project model here, which is not super fancy, and that's actually on purpose. So this could have been a double diamond or a triple diamond or a circular repeating process or whatever. But we chose a super boring linear process because that's super non-threatening to middle management and to top management. This they know, right? It's linear, it ends at some point. Super, super simple. I can relate to this. And then we put a little bit of a fancy buzzwords in there just to still show that it's a little bit of innovation, right? But basically the first part of the process is what we call the baseline. It could have been called analysis. It could have been called research. But the reason we actually called it baseline is because that's what we're doing. We're creating a baseline for the work that we do. And part of that is doing an analysis of the as-is journey. What does it actually look like right now? We start by looking at the customer journey. I think most of us do that, right? But we don't stop there. So of course we go out and we talk to customers, we map their journeys, we interview them and find out their pain points, and they confirmed the suspicions that were already rampant in the organization, which is it takes far too long to become a customer in Nordea, and it's also frustrating to get there. Next, of course, we could have stopped there, right? No, of course, we need to do something about that. Let's go on. The reason we call it baseline is we also look at the processes that are underneath. So a lot of you will probably know this as a service blueprint, right? But we're looking at the processes that support the journey. We're looking at the touch points, both the physical and the digital. But we're also looking at the back-end systems that support the processes and support the digital interfaces. So what we call end-to-end, front-to-back, looking all the way through. Because if we are to build strong business cases, then we need a strong foundation to also argue why our ideas are better than all the other ideas. So other things we found were in the process, for example, there was just far too many interactions with the customers to become a customer. So there was 3 different departments involved in the process. All of them were calling the customers at different points in time, asking roughly the same question. Not a great experience for the customer, extremely not cost efficient for the business. A lot of internal handovers. So every time someone did something, they would hand over to the next department. That leads to queuing time. That leads to long lead times, basically. Also not great. We took a look at our digital touch points, so our homepages, our application systems, and found, first of all, the language was not very welcoming. We even had countries where they were hiding the application link on the website because there was this basically a culture in the organization that it's too expensive to take in new customers. We only want the good customers. And that sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If your process is really bad and your customer journey is really bad, then yes, it is expensive to take in customers. And then what someone in strategy will tell you, then be more selective on the customers you take in. We went the other way and saying, what if we just made it really efficient to take in new customers and then we welcomed everyone? Wouldn't that be a good idea? Divided opinions on that in the first place. And then we looked at the system landscape and saw that what we had were really old systems that we set up almost 10 years ago. They were outdated. We couldn't work in them. We could barely update them. Just to make a small text change in our application system took at least 3 months to do, which makes it really, really hard when you want to improve that specific system and that specific journey. So a lot of issues. We also went really deep here in looking at the process. So not only are we looking at the process steps, we're also looking at how many employees are involved in actually carrying this out. How much time are they spending doing this little task, then this little task? So really detailed process mapping, process timing, which some of you have worked with Lean. It's a lot of those disciplines basically. So if you have any process colleagues or something like that in your organization, I could really recommend teaming up with them to do this kind of work. In this case, we did it on our own. I have a process background from way back in the day, so knew some of the tools as well. But if you have help, that's definitely recommended. Also to get buy-in here, we did a lot of it, on our own. So it was a really small team to begin with. A lot of the people I worked with hadn't done customer interviews before, so we did small training exercises to get that going and making sure we could do interviews in Finnish and Swedish and Norwegian. I did them myself in Denmark just to get going. So it was really just, I think if we go back to the checklist, starting small, getting buy-in, make do with what you can, right, to prove the value and get going. But yeah, a lot of issues. Next step in our process was then to take all of these issues, to take our baseline and present it to management and agree on what could be a way forward. So that's our reimagine phase. Basically, what we did here was to knock on the door of top management, said, great, you allowed us to map the journey. Now we would also like to share the results. And we share them without making excuses. So we share them honestly, the direct feedback from the customer, and we know this looks bad. Let's do something about it. And then we sat together with them and said, first of all, can we live with the experience we have today? I think that was a resounding no. Before it took almost 30 days to become a new business customer in Nordea. That was sort of the biggest pain point. It was just so long and so slow. And we said, that can't be the vision for the future, right? So let's say, what would we like it to be when we're done? We also need to set a very firm target, so it's not just this fluffy vision statement that, in the future we would like to do this. No, we said for the overall journey, time became sort of a focus point for us, saying in 2030 at the very latest, it should take maximum 2 days to be a customer, a business customer in Nordea. That's quite a reduction from going from 30 to 2 days. But then we agreed with them to say, this is where we need to go. Let's break it down over the next couple of years. So in the first year, we need to go from 30 days to at least then 10 days. And then the year after, it can be 7, and then it can be 5 or 4, and then eventually we'll need to get to 2. But we need to show progress all the way through. And we need you guys to lean in. That was the other part. So we set it as a firm KPI. We managed to convince the head of our business area, so her name is Nina Akilati. She sits in basically top management, the executive management team. We put it on her personal scorecard for the year that if we don't onboard, it's 90% of customers within 10 days, she doesn't get her full bonus. And not only did we convince her to do it, we also convinced her colleague in operations, it was called Eric, to say, Eric, you should also have it on your scorecard because you share this process, you do the product opening, you do the onboarding. You both have to deliver on this KPI for it to work, so you need to share it. I think that was the first time I heard, at least, it done in Nordea, that they actually had shared KPIs across business areas. That's crazy, right? But this was to make sure that it actually happened, and we of course leaned in as well and said we'll help you get there, but you have to lean in and pave the way for us. We also agreed that we shouldn't have 3 interactions with the customers throughout this process or this journey. There should only be one. There should only be one team handling this instead of 3, and that's going to require quite some change. Our process needs to be much more efficient. our overall strategy was to grow in this segment as well, and it's hard to grow when you hide the link on your webpage and you also have really inefficient processes. Then we would have to hire a lot more people to do it. So we said, let's try to keep the number of people we have now, make it more efficient, and see if we can get more customers in. And to get more customers in, we also agreed we need to change the culture around this. Customers are not risks, they are opportunities, and we have to convince the organization of that. So we revamped, we need to revamp all our communication on the website. We need to limit the restrictions we have on when we do applications. We need to remove a lot of frictions, basically. And then we need to replace the old systems because we can't live with small changes taking 3 months. We need to be able to adapt almost in real time to live a better experiences. So now we knew where we needed to go. Now we needed to detail that down into what do we actually need to do to get there, which initiatives needs to be prioritized. Basically become really, really concrete. Now for some of you, maybe this scenario is familiar. Have you ever tried being in these workshops where you print your nice journey, you hang it up on the wall, post-its are flying around, everyone's super excited. They can finally see exactly what's happening with the customers. Everyone's agreeing on we need to do something, and the post-its, big data and all these things we write on post-its. We need AI. We definitely need AI in the journey. And then, a year passes, 2 years passes, and suddenly they just lie on a shelf somewhere, on a cupboard, or on your desktop as a PowerPoint, or in a Figma board somewhere, and it never really materialized into anything. I've tried that as well in previous jobs. It's the really hard hurdle to get by, to say, we know what the journey looks like, we know what the pain points are, we also know what the solutions are, but how the hell do we get these solutions prioritized? How do we fight all the other great ideas and all the other great initiatives that we have? How do we get on the roadmap, basically? That's where we need the tangible business case, and that's why we spend quite a lot of time on the baselining part, because that's what enables us to actually build the business case, to show why is it our idea that should be prioritized. Not only because it's the right thing to do for the customer, definitely it is, but it also needs to make sense for the business. That's what we spend a lot of time on as well, to say, basically showing, one, we could bring down the lead time, that's great for the customer, but that doesn't really matter that much for the business unless we can get more customers in. What's a realistic estimate of how many more customers we can get through? For that, you can look at conversion, for example. What's the conversion of the current solution? Can we just increase that by 10%? Is that realistic with a new design? If yes, then we can build that into the business case. With the process, we could very specifically say, if we cut out this step, right now we're calling 3 times. What if we cut those 2 calls down to only 1? That's very tangible, right? We could save half an hour for every onboarding case. How many do we have per year of those? Then that gives you a very tangible sort of number to say, if we don't get more customers, at least we can save this many FTEs, right? And we can convert that to real money that can compete with the other business cases. So getting really, really tangible on what can you do for the business, how can you help them is key in this step. And then the last part is we need to anchor it as well. So in order for this to live, we can't just go, here's a journey, here's the pain points, here's the initiatives, good luck executing, and then we walk away, right? We need someone to actually own this and drive this and fight to get it into the organization, to get it into the priorities, to get it into the roadmap. In our case, we did this ourselves. So we said we did the mapping, we did the workshops on what do we need to do, we broke it down into a roadmap, and then we are ourselves executing on that roadmap as well. Of course, we're bringing people along, but we were so dead set on making this work that we said, I think one of the bullet points as well, get your hands dirty. Go and actually do it. If no one else will do it, then you do it. You be the journey owner, you be the change maker, you be the project manager, I've even had to do like risk assessments and signing contracts with external vendors and whatever it is, just get it done to show that this is the right thing to do, this is the right thing to work, the right way to work. Yeah. So we did this. We've been going for a little over a year now on this project, and then I think now one of the very key slides is working. So let's see if I can actually remember it. But that's the results. So basically, we've gone from 30 days to onboard a business customer. Now we're below 10 days, which is the target for this year. Yes, still not at the 2 days, but it's getting significantly better. And we've, as I said, we've broken down the KPI basically over the coming years. So every year the target decreases, and we've made a commitment with our head of business area that the KPI will stand for the full strategy period, which ends in 2030. Now I'm just gonna check the remaining stats here. Then what we also done is we reorganized basically the way the process functions. So before there were 3 teams, now there's only 1. So we basically took people and moved them from operations, from what we have something called KYC services. We moved them into 1 team close to the business to make sure we had full control over what was going on in the process. And that was not easy. That was quite the struggle to get the, first of all, buy-in to do this. There's something when in a big organization you wanna take resources from one area, they seem to fight you for some reason. People like to build kingdoms, right? And here we used sort of our leverage in top management as well to say, you guys leaned in. If we are to get to this KPI, so we said it before we asked them to do this. We set the KPI and said if we are to live up to this, you need to help us here. We need to move these people. And it actually ended up having to be our CEO of the company having to make the decision because the business areas couldn't agree. We had to raise it up to Frank, our CEO, who looked at it. And of course, we had our nice customer journey to go along with it. And he looked at it and said, this makes sense for the customer. Why shouldn't we do it? And then operations was quiet, and we were allowed to do it. We have a standing engagement in December where we then also have to go back to the CEO and actually prove that it worked. Luckily, we can do that now because we actually have the receipts. Another problem we had was this efficiency problem, right? So before it took a long time to basically take a new customer in. Now we are a lot more efficient. Basically, we improved productivity with 190%. Just to really understand, what we're able to do now is take in almost 3 times the number of customers with the same number of people. That's really nice for the business, especially the business owner in Denmark, where we did the first pilot of the initiatives. He's walking on water now, right? He's managed to increase efficiency with almost 200%. His targets for the year were set on what he did last year. So he's outperforming that by, a wide margin. He is absolutely loving it. And he's, of course, now really interested in what else can we do for him. So what's the next journey we'll look at, right? Because if we can deliver these types of results for the first one, what will we be able to do with the next ones? On the communication part, we also significantly improved. So we went from this culture and almost this message of why should we allow you to become a customer with Nordea? We had these strict screening requirements. For some customers, we asked them to fill out a full business plan to make sure that they were serious about their business before we took them in, to now seeing them as opportunities to saying, welcome, we're so happy you chose us instead of all the other banks you could have chosen. What can we do to actually help you? And then we've done a lot of risk mitigating things in our product portfolio to say we have a basic offering for everyone that more or less everyone is welcome to get. And then, of course, we can talk, what does your business need? And can we then provide that for financing and all kinds of other things that carry a little more risk. But everyone should basically have access to a business account so you can start your business no matter how big or how small. Then I think one of the biggest things as well is we replaced these really slow old systems, and that was quite the struggle as well. So basically we went to our IT department and said, we need to do something here. We can't live with the solution that the way they are today. And they said, great, yeah, we can launch something in 3 to 4 years. Be a big investment, and yeah, we can get started in roughly half a year, depending on when funding arrives. We went, okay, that really doesn't help us in this strategy period. So could we do anything in the meantime? And what we actually did was we went out into market and said, what can we buy externally that we can plug in as fast as possible? And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than what we have today. So that's what we did. We got a little help from procurement, of course, but then went out and talked to external vendors and said, what can you do and how fast can you implement? And in Denmark, I think we had the record from the contract was signed until we were live with the new application. It took 6 weeks, basically. So from 4 years to 6 weeks, that's also quite the improvement. And now we're live with this new system in all countries for the Nordic markets, onboarding customers every day with great success. Yeah. And lastly, of course, we also looked at the customer satisfaction. So before we did the change, we had a CSAT score of 4.2 out of 10. Not great, as customers were also telling us. It was long, it was frustrating, it was not very fun. Now we have a CSAT score of 8.3 out of 10 for customers that have just been onboarded, which is, yeah, better. We can live with that. We still have improvements to come, so good first results already here. And part of that was also setting up the actual metrics. So before we started, it didn't exist. But we said, we've done the baseline now. We need to know where we are before we start these initiatives. So we set up what we call an end journey survey. So basically trying to identify when do we think a customer is onboarded, and then trying to hit them with a reflective survey on how has the whole experience been. Also measure different touch points as we go along. But the main one for us is this: when you have everything you need, that's when we want to know your actual feedback, and not just applying, filling out an online form, but actually when you feel like you've ended your journey. Yeah. So did I do everything I told you to go and do, and everything I kind of promised myself to do? Well, partly. If we look at my little checklist, we started small. We said we have these 5 key journeys. Let's just pick one of them. Let's not try and map everything, map the whole world. Let's pick one of them. We also actually said to them, maybe just take one country to start with. They didn't go for that, so we had to do all 4 markets at the same time. But I'm actually glad we did that, because we've been able to make a lot more impact now by doing that. Find a problem worth solving. Top management helped us there to actually pick their biggest pain point. Big risk, also big reward if you make it. So sometimes it helps to be a little brave. And then this getting your hands dirty, we definitely had to do that. Carrying the project all the way through, carrying out the mapping, carrying out the workshop, detailing the initiatives, negotiating with IT, negotiating with external vendors, doing risk assessments, doing risk mitigating actions, all kind of fun things that we hadn't done before. But we sort of had this mindset of, well, let's try. What's the worst that could happen, right? If no one does it, then nothing happens. At least if we do it, we might do it half-baked or not to perfection, but it's still going to be better than nothing. Then on the anchoring, I said we should appoint one owner for each key customer journey. Have we done that? No, not yet. But we are actually in the process. So for the past year, our little team has been driving the ownership of the journey. Now we're going to appoint someone to keep running it for the next year, and then we'll move on to the next key journey area to build that up. So things are in work, but the person hasn't actually been appointed yet. So part check mark. We need to measure the customer journey end to end, and not just in the touch point. We've set that up now with quite extensive KPIs, some going on the actual customer satisfaction part, some going on the customer behavior, so being able to track conversion, being able to track lead time, drop-offs, these kind of things. We're also measuring heavily on efficiency, so that's something business is very keen on, right? We can see how many employees are actually involved in performing this full time, and how many cases are they able to do per day, and we're tracking that number every week, every month, to follow up on the things that we're doing, actually helping them to become more efficient, helping to bring down the lead time, helping to increase conversion, and we follow up quite stringently on that, even to the point where these numbers go to our CEO every quarter to review the progress of them. And then spreading the way of thinking. So don't just go it alone, but try to take people along for the journey. We've done that to some extent. I think we could do more. When we kicked off the project, for example, we held a training session for 2 days, basically taking the key players that we needed to bring along for the journey. We flew them to Copenhagen, and then we had a 2-day course on customer journeys. What is it? Why do we work with it? How do we work with it? Why is it important? Which I think was a great success. But now we have 30 people who sort of get the mindset. We need to spread that even further in the organization. So we'll definitely do it again for the next round. And then for the integration, building development around customer journeys, I think is a large step for organizations that are mainly used to working in channels or with a product focus. So actually taking this holistic view, taking an end-to-end view on how you do development. It's a shift, but we've managed to do it now for one area, saying we need to have a development team that focuses for all of it. You don't just do the onboarding application, you also are invested in making sure our website fits with the purpose. You're also invested in making sure the processes fits with what it is that we want to do for the journey. You're also making sure that the product portfolio matches with what we want to do. So it's the full end-to-end view. It's both IT, it's also business. It's marketing, it's experience, it's everything. You need to have a hand in everything. You don't need to do everything, but you need to make sure that all of that is synchronized and going in the same direction. And then making sure that there is a budget for doing this, not only now, but also in the future. We have a budget for this year. We're right now negotiating the budget for next year's and for the next 4 years. So that will be in place as well to make sure that the initiatives we identified will also be carried out when we go into the future. And then lastly, linking the KPIs directly to the customer journeys. I think that's one of the things we've been mostly successful with. First of all, setting them up, but also being able to anchor them really high in the organization. Because whenever you get your top management to take something into their personal KPI scorecard, you can be pretty damn certain it will trickle down to all the other departments. They want to make sure that they actually deliver on that. So yeah, I think we've been successful with this. Now I don't know if I almost dare to give you a list. Otherwise, I'll probably be back next year to follow up whether or not I feel I'm giving myself homework here. But basically, yeah, just 3 reflections from the work we've been doing now. Also reflecting back on the past work I've done. I've had top management buy-in from the start. We didn't have it for starting out in Nordea. So it's been an interesting experience, sort of pushing this bottom up and getting that buy-in. So yeah, 3 tips for any of you trying to do that is first of all, of course, map the journey, but map the whole journey. So not just end-to-end from a customer point of view, but also the front to back. Understand what's going on in the organization that's causing the frictions in the customer journey. Map the processes, map the system landscape, grab a hold of your system architect or your process colleagues or whatever you can. If you can't do that, try to do it yourself to figure out what is actually going on, what is causing these things, to figure out what's the trade-offs we need to do when we actually want to change something. And then try to speak the language of the business. I think we all go to work every day to want to deliver good customer experiences. You're not going to get anyone in top management or even middle management saying we want to deliver bad customer experiences, right? But it's just hard to do when there's so many other agendas going on at the same time. So helping them achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve while also achieving yours is really the way to go. If you can help increase efficiency. If you can help them increase sales, then they're going to prioritize that 9 times out of 10 instead of just coming and saying we can help improve customer experience, and then the other things will probably follow. We need to be really tangible on what else are you getting besides happier customers. I think we're in a unique position to do that, really understanding the journey and understanding the processes and the systems that apply. And then, this execution does not happen on slides. So I've tried it in the past. We've done these fancy design projects, great slides, great A0s hanging on the walls. We even did like really nice handover packages of these are the initiatives. We've detailed them out. We've tested them with customers to make sure that this is just gonna fly. But if you leave it there, then it's probably not gonna be executed, or it's probably not gonna be executed the way you think it will. So following it up, or at least making sure that someone has it as their main responsibility to follow this up. So customer journey ownership, I think, is a really key part, especially in large organizations. If you want to make this happen, someone should have this as their full-time job to make it happen. And if no one has it today, then maybe it's you, and then maybe you show them that there's a need for this role going forward. That's at least been our approach. Yeah.
Amazing, Simon. Inspiring as last year, and I'm definitely looking forward on next year's event to hear what's the story going to be then. So we heard like really inspiring presentation of last year, top down, now bottom up, and that's why I think it was so fantastic to have you here, because there's very few people globally who have actually done it both ways. So now you had the first the luxury of doing it top down, where the road was paid for you, and now you had to do it bottom up. So it was like great to hear that story. But hey, let's open up for a few questions from the audience. Who wants to be the first one? Let's go over there.
Which one? Okay.
Thank you. Hey Simon, thanks for the presentation. The question I have for you is, how do you organize yourself for success? Because you were talking about direct access to CEO. I know it's not direct, it's a path. But I mean, are you a design organization? You're saying maybe if no one owns the journey, you should own it. But who are you as a stakeholder in the organization? So how do you identify your team, your action in the organization to actually get the ownership or the mandate to have a budget even?
Mm-hmm. A really good question. So when I first joined Nordea, there was basically just me sitting in a small project organization located in our COO area in business banking. So sort of the people that drive initiatives for business banking across. Kind of lonely. Started reaching out a little bit. There was pockets around in the organization where we had other service designers. We also had a design organization where competences were sort of residing. But we kind of had to build it from scratch. So in the beginning, it was a project. Over time, we could then show that there's really a need for this and we should do this more consistently. So now we are a small department with, I think, we're around 12, 13 people, something like that, where we got to steal different resources, some customer experience, some semi-design resources, some really project management heavy resources to sort of help us make this happen, right? So it's something we built bottom up and then sold it in as soon as we started getting more buy-in on. This makes sense. This is showing results as well. That's when we then swooped in and said, shouldn't we make this an actual department? So that's our department name, for example, now is Corporate Nordic Customer Journeys, something like that. I think I always forget the name, but it has customer journeys in there, and that's the key part.
Hello, thank you. Just want to quickly say thank you to ESA for organizing this. I've lived in Copenhagen for 10 years, and today is my first time in Malmö, so there's a real reason to come over the bridge. Very nice presentation, thank you. I basically would like to know, you made a certain part of the client journey very efficient. You handle more clients in less days. That has ramifications for the later parts of a client's journey, other journeys that the client has to go through. If you have more clients, are there any negative impacts for later journeys who have to maintain the client? Or maybe then there's more need for client support because they have more questions. So it can also have, being more efficient in the initial parts of a client journey can sometimes be hard for later journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we felt it quite concretely in this journey as well. So if you fix one part, it influences the other, right? So for example, we stopped hiding the link on the website. That means more applications. That means that the team that's processing the applications needs to be more efficient. Okay, then we made them more efficient. We updated the application systems to make it even easier as well. That meant even more clients that they then, or more applications they had to process. Then we got the processing efficiency up from that team. Then what happens is the customers, once we approve them, have to sign an agreement and the products have to be opened, which is in some parts done semi-automatically. In some parts there's some manual work as well. That means that now there's a new team that's receiving triple the volume that they're used to before. So we also had to work with them to say, we can see our numbers are starting to increase. Are you able to keep up over here in operations? If not, then we need to build solutions for you guys as well. So it was really making sure that the whole value chain was sort of talking together. And then exactly as you say, once they then are onboarded, they are going into the business. How do we place them into the right portfolios? How do we make sure that we have enough advisors ready to handle them, that support is ready to take calls if needed. So it's really making the whole value chain talk together. It was one of the sort of key obstacles in the beginning. Now we have a setup where basically every week we talk with the full value chain. So we have someone from the business, someone from operations, making sure that what's happening last week, what's happening next week, can we handle now? We also have someone from marketing. We're running a campaign next week. Are we ready? Are we ready for that? What does the queues look like in this team? What does the SLAs look like for the operations team? So making sure we have this linkage and everyone's communicating. Otherwise, we end up in the same problem that we had when we began.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Simon, so much for again sharing your knowledge. Simon's going to be here on a break, so I know that there were a lot of other questions, so find Simon there.